Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're cracking the code on one of the absolute most dynamic, massive, and frankly, complex economic frontiers on the planet, the Indian consumer market. If you want to understand how global giants don't just survive, but actively thrive in a landscape of 1.4 billion people, well, you're in the right place. We're going to bridge high-level consumer psychology with some heavyweight corporate case studies to show you exactly how it's done.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. The Indian market opportunity. 2. The India versus Bharat mindsets. 3. Winning the rural pyramid. 4. The LIAP, localization playbook. 5. McDonald's, a menu reimagined. And finally, 6. IKEA's Indian entry strategy.
All right, Section 1, the Indian market opportunity, a $2 trillion growth engine.
Look, emerging markets are the new critical battleground for global brands, right? And India is totally leading the charge. Just look at this number, 100 million. That's the number of people India is projected to add to its working-age population by 2030. That is the highest increase globally, creating an unparalleled demographic dividend. We're talking about a massive, unprecedented influx of new, active consumers entering the market.
But, it's not just about the sheer population size. It's really about purchasing power and infrastructure. Real disposable income is rising by about 6% every single year. Combine that with rapid e-commerce growth and the India tech stack, which has driven digital payment adoption to 45% of all internet users, and you have a market where traditional barriers to entry have essentially been obliterated. It's a highly lucrative space for multinational corporations right now.
But hold on. Despite all this rapid digital transformation, you absolutely cannot ignore the cultural foundation. Have you heard of the Indian Knowledge System, or IKS? It's a deeply rooted framework of traditional wisdom. It basically tells us that consumer trust, community relationships, and word of mouth are still the ultimate drivers of buying behavior. You really have to marry modern digital reach with these traditional values if you actually want to succeed.
Moving on to Section 2, India versus Bharat mindsets, a tale of two consumers.
To navigate those cultural values we just talked about, marketers have to understand this fascinating psychological duality, because you aren't just selling to one monolithic country. Notice the incredible contrast here. On the left, we've got the Indian mindset. This is your urban, upper pyramid consumer. They're right-brain driven, looking for luxury, global aspirations, and social validation. They want cruise control and exotic ingredients. But then on the right, you have the Bharat mindset. This consumer is highly rational, left-brain driven, and demands maximum value. They respond to what's called magical pricing. Think specific, super affordable price points like 5 or 10 rupees. This perfectly illustrates why a one-size-fits-all approach is practically guaranteed to fail. You literally need entirely different strategies for these different mindsets.
Section 3, winning the rural pyramid, the fortune at the bottom.
Speaking of that Bharat mindset, let's talk about the bottom of the pyramid economic model. There is a massive fortune to be made among 800 million potential rural consumers, and we're not just talking about basic necessities here. Just look at these rural auto sales. They completely prove the immense purchasing power outside urban centers. Notice Hero Motocorp there on the far right? A whopping 47% of their total sales come from rural areas? The purchasing power is undeniably there, but unlocking it requires a very specific approach.
So how do the fast-moving consumer goods giants actually conquer this space? Well, tactical adaptation. They use a low-margin, high-volume model. This was famously kick-started by Calvin Kleins' sachet revolution. See, because many rural consumers earn daily or weekly wages, their consumption budgets are really short-term. So selling a tiny, affordable sachet of shampoo for just a couple of rupees, it works perfectly. Today, smaller, affordable stock-keeping units make up over 40% of FMCG sales. Toss in smart distribution models like Hindustan Unilever's Project Shakti, which actually turns village self-help groups into direct local distributors, and you're looking at an absolute masterclass in frugal innovation.
All right, Section 4, the LEAP localization playbook, Bain's strategy for MNCs.
If you're a multinational corporation, how do you actually structure all of this into a winning strategy? Let's walk through the LEAP playbook. It's a really concrete framework developed by Bain & Company. Step 1, lead in a core category. You absolutely must establish a strong, fast-growing hero product.
Step 2, expand portfolios to straddle both that premium India segment and the value-driven Bharat segment. Step 3, adapt the 4 Ps. That's product, price, place, and promotion for diverse regional clusters. And finally, Step 4, perform at peak levels. This means committing patient capital and treating the market as a long-term balance sheet game, definitely not a quick, short-term profit grab.
A perfect example of performing at peak levels is the Japanese hygiene company Unicharm. They patiently invested in the market and adapted incredibly smartly by selling a single pant-style diaper. This specific, localized innovation catered perfectly to the Indian consumer's value equation, and the result? An 18-fold revenue increase. 18!
Section 5. McDonald's, a menu reimagined, the ultimate localization test.
Okay, let's pivot to our first heavyweight corporate case study to see how these theories play out in the real world. McDonald's entered India in 1996, and they faced what is probably the ultimate localization hurdle. Think about it. How do you sell the world's most famous beef burger in a country where 80% of the population practices Hinduism and reveres cows, and where a large Muslim population abstains from pork?
The answer was complete, totally unprecedented adaptation. As Amit Jatia, the vice chairman of Hardcastle Restaurants, perfectly put it, quote, "We knew from day one that we had to Indianize our menu. The Big Mac couldn't work here," end quote. This simple human realization led to a global first for McDonald's, a completely beef and pork-free menu, no exceptions.
Let's actually break down the exact tactics McDonald's used to solve these challenges, while somehow keeping their iconic fast food identity intact. First, to replace the Big Mac, they created the Maharaja Mac, using chicken or vegetarian patties. To respect those strict dietary rules, they implemented entirely segregated kitchens using green and red color coding to completely prevent cross-contamination. To meet the Bharat affordability needs we talked about earlier, they launched the Happy Price menu. And finally, to capture local taste preferences, they innovated totally new products, like the wildly successful Makalu Tikki Burger.
And this next stat really illustrates the depth of their commitment. Get this, approximately 50% of the entire McDonald's menu in India is strictly vegetarian. Half the menu. That is a localized supply chain and menu architecture built completely from scratch.
Finally, Section 6. IKEA's Indian entry strategy. Flat packing for the subcontinent.
Now, let's look at IKEA. The Swedish furniture giant actually spent decades navigating strict regulatory and cultural hurdles before they finally opened their doors in India in 2018. Their ethnographic research was insanely deep. They visited thousands of Indian homes just to learn exactly how people lived. And this led to some brilliant, highly specific product tweaks. For instance, they redesigned their standard wardrobes to fit into smaller Indian bedrooms. They added pressure cookers to match local cooking styles, and just like McDonald's, they swapped out their signature beef and pork meatballs for chicken and veg options in the food court. Plus, to meet strict foreign direct investment regulations, they committed to sourcing 30% of their products locally.
But the real takeaway here is how starkly their Indian strategy contrasts with their standard global model. I mean, globally, IKEA relies on a standardized range, DIY self-assembly, and a physical store-first approach. But in India, they shifted to culturally adapted products. They offered localized third-party assembly options because, let's be honest, DIY just isn't as culturally prevalent there. And they pushed an immediate omni-channel integration, launching e-commerce right alongside their physical stores to capture that super digitally savvy consumer base.
So what does this all mean? Which brings us to the core takeaway of this explainer. Whether you're selling tiny 2-rupee sachets of shampoo, chicken Maharaja Macs, or flat-packed wardrobes, the lesson is crystal clear. India isn't just a market you enter, it's a market you must entirely adapt to. Success here demands a profound respect for local culture, a deep understanding of pricing psychology, and relentless, patient localization.
As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. The Indian middle class is exploding right now, and traditional barriers are falling away faster than ever. So, is your brand ready to tear up its standard global playbook to win this massive frontier, or will it simply be left behind? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep studying, keep adapting, and I'll catch you next time.